All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to get started. I appreciate everybody on a Tuesday night spending some time with us. For those of you I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is John Young. I'm the Director of Counseling here at McQuaid Jesuit. This is my third year, so I made it through the sophomore slump, junior. I'm making my way through. Prior to my time here, I was the Dean of Admission at Hobart and William Smith Colleges in Geneva, New York, and worked at Skidmore College before that and Colgate University before that. So some of my comments tonight won't just be about my role now, but about my former role as an admissions officer, because I think it brings some color to the conversation. I bring well wishes on behalf of the college advising team. Mrs. Galetto in the College Advisement Center will be a great resource for all of you. And I know many of your sons get to work with Mr. Griffa. I get the beginning of the alphabet. People with last names A through J are mine. K through Z work with Mr. Griffa. He would be here, except he's actually at our professional organization, the National Association of College Admissions Counseling's annual conference is this week. So he's in Columbus, Ohio, learning all the great things. I've gotten a text message from him already, but it was from Cleveland, where he stopped to get ice cream. So I hope he's learning. I hope he's learning some great things. We've got a lot of information to share with you this evening, and I thought who better to pinch hit for Mr. Griffa than John Serafine, who has more probably collective wisdom than all of us on the college advisement team when it comes to this process. So I'd love for him to say a couple words of welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I spent 33 years at Fairport High School doing what John's doing here now, and I loved every second of it. And so when I came here and did it for 3 years, I kind of begrudgingly gave the job up, which is a job I really, really enjoyed, to John. And actually, I recruited John here. And the best thing I can say to you is you could not be in better hands than you are with John. And I mean that sincerely. If he wasn't here, I'd be telling you the same things. I mean, he downplayed his experience. So he's got like 30 years on the other side of the desk working in college admissions. So he's the director of admissions at Colgate, Skidmore, and Hobart and William Smith Colleges, 3 great institutions. So he brings an incredible array of experience here. And the experience on the other side of the table in the admissions world is invaluable. So he's just a great person to have working with our kids and with our parents. John and I met with our senior class right in here this morning during Flex to kind of go over some of the same stuff that we're going to talk about tonight. One of the things I told the kids, or 2 things I told the kids this morning. One was they've never done this before. Right, ever, and they're never going to do it again unless they go to grad school, but they've never done this before, so it's overwhelming. I mean, there's a lot of pieces to it. It's changing all the time. They get bombarded with information from us. I'm sure they get bombarded with information from you guys, so it's a lot. So I said to them this morning, I said, look, you've never done this before. We have people here who have done this, between the 2 of us and Jeff Griffin, we probably have 100 and some odd years worth of experience. So I asked them, I said, lean on people, ask questions, let people help you. That's what this is all about. And the other thing I said to them, and I'm sure John will touch on this tonight, this whole college application process is a pretty unforgiving system when it comes to deadlines. And unfortunately, we live in this world where if a kid misses a deadline, you get another shot. In the college admissions world, it's like you're late, and the party's kind of over. So those are the 2 big messages I gave them today. Pay close attention to the deadlines, and it's essentially like the fall of senior year is essentially like taking another course for the first few months of the school year. It really is. I mean, if it's done well, between researching and doing your essays and completing your common application and chasing people down to write letters of recommendation and getting to college campuses and meeting with college reps when they come to McQuaid. There's a lot, right? And like I said, they've never done it before. So I guess, I asked them to lean on us as they go through the process, right? So.
Just for I think probably for John and my edification here, how many of you are parents going through this the first time? How many of this is your oldest? Oh, it's a good number. How many of you have done this before? More than once? More than twice? Oh, all right. You can come on up and lead the program. I'm reminded my favorite day always in college admissions was arrival day, when all the first-year students would show up on campus for the first time, and you see this huge range of parent expression. Right, there were lots of younger brothers and sisters who were very happy that they're going off. We saw lots of new dogs. We would see lots of parents with really big sunglasses. It was great, but still one of my favorite moments ever was I always would look out for the students whose parents weren't there. And so there was this one student on the corner with a bunch of suitcases and boxes and no parent to be seen, so I ran right over. Usually they're students who came from far away, from California, who fly out by themselves. And so I walked over and introduced myself, and I asked where the student was from, and he said, Rochester. And I said, well, that's kind of interesting. Where's your family? And he said, Mr. Young, I'm the youngest of 8. They're on a winery tour. I don't know if they're going to be back for the parent session or not. So the importance of that, though, is to remember that even though you may have done this before, it is the first time for this son to be going through the process, and it changes a lot. Let me talk a little bit about the agenda here. We're going to go over what we've covered so far with your sons. I'm going to talk a little bit about trends that we're seeing in admissions. We're going to go over decision plans, the college search, standardized testing, which is making a comeback, the essay, talk a little bit about Naviance and the system we use here. We're going to go over that checklist that you have in your hand, talk briefly about financial aid, and then give you some closing tips. So first, let me sort of recap where we are. In October of last year, many of your sons took the PSAT. That really kicked off for a lot of them, starting to get mail from colleges and certainly plenty of emails. Then in December, we had College Information Week, where we had 7 different experts speak to our crowd. We recorded all of those. Those are all available on YouTube if you want to review any of them. There's some very handy pieces of information there. We had Junior Parent Night for all of you in January. That's where a lot of this process kicked off for you. We got you login information for Naviance, and things moved from there. Then we met with your sons individually in February to plan their senior courses, get to know them a little bit better. We took them to the Rochester National College Fair in March at the Convention Center, where they got to meet with tons of different colleges and university representatives. In April, we started our college planning seminars. We met with each student in small groups 4 times to go over things like the college search, using Naviance, the common application, college visits, the essay. And then in May, and I actually met with a couple in June, we had individual meetings with your sons just to talk more specifically about their college plans and what they're hoping to get out of this experience. In August, we ran some summer workshops. We ran one on the Common Application and got students to link their Common Application to their Naviance account. We did a program on the essay and generating the activity list. And then today, we just had our senior meeting at Flex. We've got Parent Night tonight. On September 30th at 6:30, let me encourage you all to come to our financial aid night. We have the Vice President from University of Rochester coming to really talk in depth about financial aid and its role in the college admissions process. From here on out, it's really about individual meetings with your son. And if you have any questions and want to join any of those meetings, please let Mr. Griff or myself know. We're happy to meet with parents at any time. But every student's process tends to diverge a little bit from here on out. They've got schools that they're interested in, places that they want to go, things that they're hoping to achieve. And we save most of our day to meet with students and help them along here. And then it will all culminate on May 1st, which is the National Decision Day. That's where students need to deposit at one of their schools, and we'll have a celebration here on campus. It'll be an exciting day. It's one of my favorites. Let me talk a little bit about trends. And what you're seeing on the screen is one of the things that all of us in the profession got very excited. We learned from the lawsuit that Harvard faced in terms of the role of race-based admissions. And as part of that lawsuit, they had to release their metrics, the way they actually judge an application, the scale, the rating scale that they used. And we learned that from a couple other schools too. And I want to walk through this with you for a little bit, because when your sons are applying to colleges, every school has some form of a rating scale that they use as they review applications. And some things are going to be more important at some schools than others. It's going to vary. There's not one universal way to do this. But here at least is how Harvard does it. And you can see up on the screen, they'll give a student an academic rating from 1 to 5. 1 is strong, 5 is weak. They'll do the same thing looking at their extracurricular activities. If the student is a recruited athlete, that's why it's shaded there, they'll give a rating on their athletic prowess. On their personal rating, this is less about their activities and more about the influence that they've had on their community or their school. They will give a rating from 1 to 4. School support is how much do their recommenders, do the people at their high school get behind them as an applicant, and then they will boil that down to an average and overall rating from 1 to 5. That's how Harvard chooses to do it. One of my buddies at a selective small liberal arts college sent me their scale, and on the condition that it will remain nameless. But they rate the student's high school on a scale from 4 to 1. They go in the opposite direction, 4 being high, 1 being low. They've got a rating in their system for every high school in the country. They do a separate rating for the courses that a student has chosen to take, the grades that they've received, what their recommenders say about them. If they've submitted their standardized testing, they will rate that on a scale as well. If the student has a class rank, they will rate that. Their essay will be ranked, their interview will be ranked if they have one, and then they'll give a personal rating based on their co-curricular contributions, and again, put it on a scale. So you can see how this is slightly different from college to college, how they'll do this. There are certain things that are more important to one place than another, but every school has some form of this. Unfortunately, they tend not to share it with all of us, and they certainly don't give us the numbers behind those numbers. I don't know what makes a Harvard academic 1 versus a Harvard academic 5, but you can get a clue here on how they do these kind of things. I think it's really fascinating to understand a little bit behind the scenes how the sauce is made, so to speak. I think another thing that we are seeing trend-wise is the importance of demonstrated interest in the decisions that colleges are making. And if you go and visit any schools that your sons are interested in and ask them, does demonstrated interest play a role in the decision that you make, they will be honest with you. They will tell you yes or no, it doesn't play a role. If the answer is yes, I think it's a big question for a lot of our students, how do they demonstrate that interest? Well, one way is to visit. You walk on campus, you get a sense of it, that's showing interest. Meeting with the admissions representatives who come to McQuaid, and I'll show you a little bit later where you can see that information and know when they're visiting and how to register for those visits. Interacting with them via email and showing that you care. I think you're going to see, I'm sure you're seeing it now, your son's inboxes are flooded with emails from college. It's free for them to send them. They're going to fire away and send a lot. And I don't think they need to open every single email that they receive. But if it's a school they're interested in, I certainly would suggest that they do it. And what I included on this next slide is something that I brought with me from HWS. Most colleges use an information system called Slate as a way to review their applications and track their inquiries and their interest. And it gives them a ton of information. And this might scare you a little bit. I don't know if I should, I'm going to show it anyway. It just might scare you, the level of detail that we can see. So this is a student's record that I captured before I left, and it was from March 12th, if you look at the bottom of the screen, up to March 17th. So that's 5 days in this student's life cycle in the admissions process. So if you look at the bottom, you can see that he opened an email. He was coming to visit campus. We sent him an email saying, we're going to see you in a couple of days. Here's some directions, things to be thinking about. He opened that 5 times. And the last one was at 9:01 p.m. And if you have really good eyes, you can see that he opened that on an iPhone from Maine. And then he attended our campus event in Geneva, New York. And then one of my colleagues sent him a text message saying, thanks for visiting. And he sent a text message back, thanks for your help. And then they went back and forth. And then on the 16th at 8:59 a.m., he went to the Hobart William Smith website using Chrome from Gorham, Maine, and then spent 19 seconds on our financial aid page, 4 minutes and 46 seconds on the staff page, 10 seconds on the view book. You can see the detail of information that a college can find out about a student and what they're doing on your website. Now, I don't begin to tell you that we spend a ton of time digging into this and looking at every page and every second and every click. But in general, you certainly could tell if a student was engaged with you or not in this process. And I think that's really what you want to show as a student. Nobody got into the real details here, but you could see a student was opening emails regularly and communicating with the college regularly. So let me encourage you all to encourage your sons, if there's schools that they're interested in, they should be on their mailing list. It's amazing how many students don't seem to think about that. Why would I get on their mailing list? I can find out anything I want by looking at their webpage. This is why you want to get on their mailing list, so they can track that interest and know that you care. We would get a whole group of applications on the college side, which were what are called stealth applications. They came out of nowhere. We would get an application and we never knew who the student was before they applied. As an admissions officer, you're always worrying about how many students do you admit to get the class that you want. It's called yield. Who are you more likely to yield? The students who show interest, not the students who just appear out of nowhere. So make sure, and we tell your sons, sign up for mailing lists, interact with people, click on those emails every once in a while. You don't have to do every one, but just show that you're interested in it. I think that's vital. One of the other things, Mr. Serafin will talk about this a little bit, but the role of standardized testing has been increasing over the last couple of years. There was a kind of downplay for that during COVID, but it's back and certainly playing a bigger role in the admissions process. This year, Boston College was quick to point out that just under 50% of their applicant pool submitted standardized test scores, but over 80% of their admitted students had standardized test scores. So you can see that that's playing a role in the decisions that they make. Students are applying earlier. Last year, about 75% of the senior class at McQuaid submitted an early action or an early decision application. So things are moving along a little bit quicker. Our students are certainly showing more interest in schools in the South. We have seen that over the last couple of years. Wait list is playing a smaller and smaller role for our students. We had some students put on wait lists last year, but not many people really cared about it and spent much interest. They really invested their time in schools that admitted them straight out and made their decisions by May 1st and didn't wait around much. I think we only had one student who chose to go to a school after being admitted off the waiting list last year. Something you should all know that I think is good news here is that demographics are in your son's favor. This is the first year of what admissions officers are calling the demographic cliff. There's a lot fewer high school seniors this year than there have been in the last 15 years, actually, if you look back historically, and it makes sense. 2008, when your sons were born, was the Big Depression. Economically, people had less kids. Now they're all coming to college. So college is going to have to fight a little bit more for student enrollment, and that could be some good things. There's one more thing on this trend piece that I do want to hit on, and that is, and maybe I'm showing my age, but so much of my college admissions process was done via the mail and paper, and I would get an acceptance letter in the mail or a not good letter in the mail. It was the thin envelope or the thick envelope. Very little of this process is being done via mail anymore. So one of the things you all want to pay attention to is when your sons actually submit their applications, they're going to get a confirmation email in their inbox probably 24 hours after they've submitted that application. And it's going to say, hey, we received your application. Here's your username and a password to link to our individual college portal, where you can see all sorts of things. Perhaps give us some more information if you need it. It's where your admissions decisions will be posted. I can't begin to tell you, and probably it's just a generational thing, as coming out of the Amazon generation, they get that confirmation email, they tend to discard it as quickly as they got it, because it's just like they purchased something on Amazon and they just got confirmation that they did it. They just chuck it. They should log into that portal, because sometimes that's where you would log in any new grades or any new information, but it's also where they're going to see their admissions decision. And if they haven't logged into that portal, they're going to get an email a couple months later saying your admissions decision is ready to be viewed. Go to your portal to see it, and they're going to completely forget what that username, password, where to find that. And then most colleges have now wised up. They're releasing their decisions at about 5 o'clock on Friday night. so that they're not there when the phone rings off the hook for the next 3 hours. So then you are going to have to wait all weekend long till you can reach the admissions office and get that username and a password to do it. So as soon as your sons get those emails, we'll tell them this too, but I encourage you all to have them log into that portal. They can change the password to whatever they want, so they'll remember it, and then they can go check there pretty often for anything that they see. All right. I want to talk a little bit about decision plans because the number of our students who are taking advantage of these, I think, is shifting a little bit over time. You can see that there are 5 decision plans up on the screen there. Let me work from the bottom. Regular decision is traditional. Students apply usually January, February 1st. They'll get a decision at the end of March. Traditional college admissions timeline. We're seeing more colleges are moving to a rolling decision where you submit your application and a couple weeks later you'll get your decision. There's still many colleges that have what is known as early decision, and that is a binding agreement, and you want to talk about demonstrated interest, that's the best way to do it. You are signing agreement, actually you all sign it as their parent or guardian. Mr. Griff or myself will sign it as our counselor, saying I'm applying to this school, it's my first choice, if I'm admitted, I'm coming. You don't get to find out if you get admitted anyplace else. You don't get to do a bunch of different things, but you're declaring your first choice interest. And at most schools that have early decision, they have a higher acceptance rate for those early decision candidates, sometimes dramatically so. So I think it's worth considering if your sons are going through this process and there's a clear front runner for them, that early decision plan can be really helpful. We're also seeing 2 versions of early action. Early action is where you apply early, you get your decision early, but you don't have to attend the institution. You have the freedom to choose whether you would want to go there or other places. And there's 2 versions of that. Most schools have what's just called early action. You submit your application by October 15th or November 1st. You get an answer before the holidays or shortly thereafter. You have until May 1st to make up your mind. Life is great. We're seeing some colleges, though, add what's called restricted choice early action, which means you can apply early action to us, but you can't apply early action to a bunch of different other places. You don't have to come, but you can't just fire off early action applications in a bunch of different directions. So your sons should pay attention to their school lists and talk to Mr. Griffin and myself. We can talk about any type of strategies that they want to use. The early action plan, the first one that gets them a decision early, is terrific. But what we're seeing actually is the schools in the Northeast who have early action, there is not a decided admissions advantage to applying early action. They're not being admitted at a much higher rate. Early decision, yes. Early action, no. Some of the schools are exceptions to that. There are some schools where there is a decided admissions advantage to applying early action. So do it because you get things moving along, get it done, not because it's going to make this huge difference in the outcome, depending on the school. Make sense? I want to turn things over to Mr. Serafine so he can talk a little bit more about the college search process and some resources.
I wanted to add what John mentioned the word yield a minute ago. While he's talking about demonstrated interest. If you think about it, colleges, the yield rate for colleges is a big factor. It's a big deal because they get ranked on their yield rate. And quite simply put, it's like if a college sends out 100 acceptance letters, they have no clue how many of those people how many kids are going to take them up on their offer, right? And it's a little bit guessing game, a little bit historical data. They look back, like to get 100, or to get 20, maybe we have to accept 100, et cetera. So it's a guessing game. So they try to narrow that guessing game down a bit by trying to figure out your level of interest and doing all those things that John mentioned. So if you think about yield for a second, I send out 100 letters of acceptance to my college. 20 of you take me up on my offer. My yield rate is 20%, which quite honestly is fairly typical. Right? If my yield rate is 8, 9, 10%, that's a pretty telling statistic. As a high school student and parent, you might want to be a little bit concerned about that. If your yield rate, the big time Ivy Leagues, they're like a Harvard or Yale, they're probably around 70%. So yield rate is I think it's an important metric for you to understand and to ask in the admissions when you're searching. Like, what's your yield rate? So again, I always use this analogy with kids. I say, look, if you're going to the senior ball, you're probably not going to ask someone you think is going to say no. Right? I mean, it kind of makes sense. It's the same thing in the college admissions world. They're not going to invite you if they think you're going to say no. And how do they guess if you're going to say no? Like, Do they get a stealth application? They've never heard from you before. All right, so I think that whole yield concept is a really important piece of the puzzle for the college admissions world. I want to show you something here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the college search. One of the things we said to kids today is that, look, no matter where you are in the process right now, you're okay. I mean, some kids are done. Some kids have already been accepted, quite honestly. Probably we have 3 that have already been applied, admitted, the whole bit, they're done. Others haven't even begun the process yet. And right now on September, today is 15th or whatever, wherever you are, you're fine. If we're having this conversation, 6 weeks from now, and you haven't begun this process, you got a problem. All right, so it's kind of roll up your sleeves time and get to work. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how kids can search. And a lot of them are familiar with this. I just wanted to show it to you. And there's a lot of ways you can do this online. The one that I like the most is right here. And it's put up at a College Board. It's simply called Big Future. If you just go home and you Google College Board Big Future, you're going to get this screen here. I click on Plan for College and College Search, and voila, up jumps the College Search. So essentially what they're doing is they'll say to me, hey, there's like 4,000 colleges in the United States. You start clicking on some of these filters here, and you can choose whichever ones you want. So I can say, okay, I'm going to click on location, and I can say, well, I'll click on states and say, well, I want to go to school. Make it easy. We'll say I want to go to school in New York. Continue. Show colleges. Now it's showing me, well, there's 275 colleges in New York. All right, I want a major. I'll click on majors filter, and I'll say, okay, I want to be a chemistry major, just regular chemistry. Add it to my list. Show colleges. Now I'm down to 79 colleges in New York that have chemistry majors, right? And I can go on and on. If I pick on, campus life, I can say I want a school I don't want a huge school. I want a school, let's say, less than 9,000 kids. I can do that. I want a school that I can click on sports, and I can say I want a men's baseball team. I think you get the idea here, right? So show colleges. So now I'm down to 28 colleges that have met my criteria. And they list all the colleges here. Then, within these boxes, I can click on, let's pick one. Pick small ones. So I can pick on SUNY Geneseo. All right, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to continue without signing in. And I can get a ton of information about SUNY Geneseo. I can get their SAT range. I can get their average, the average cost of attendance after aid was received, their graduation rate, and I can dig and go a whole lot deeper, get a million things in here. They tell me they accept the common application. I can click on their website. I can pick the phone up and call admissions office, what tests they take, on and on and on, right? And then they give you some other schools that say, if you're interested in Geneseo, here are some schools that are similar to Geneseo in terms of admissions. So there's a lot of really good stuff here, and I could dig deeper. I could go to admissions here, and I can find out, okay, their acceptance rate at Geneseo is 66%. Application deadline's March 1. Here's their SAT range. Here's their ACT range, et cetera. And there's no shortage of information here. I could dig deeper into the acceptance rate and find out, males versus females, in-state, out-of-state. I can do a lot of stuff here. Application deadline, they have early action. There's their deadline. They have early decision. Deadline's November 15th. All right, and I can do all these tabs up here. I can do academics. I can do costs. Right? They'll give you a kind of financial aid range. So they're saying to you, hey, if your average net price income is over $110,000, you're going to pay on the average $23,488 per year. If you're at the lower end, you're going to pay less, et cetera. All right, so again, just this College Board Big Future, and I'm literally just scratching the surface of it. There's a ton of really good stuff you can use here to search. So for kids who either are looking for a couple other places that they want to apply to, or kids who are at the very beginning and have no idea to begin, this is a really good place to start. Again, it's just simply called College Board Big Future. All right, so let me get out of that. As parents, there's another good site. It's called the iPad Navigator. This is a government website. So every school, every college in the country that receives federal monies, which is all but a small handful of them, every year they have to submit data to this College Navigator here. So let's say I'll pick on John's school where he worked at Hobart. Let's say I click on Hobart here. click on Hobart William Smith colleges. I can go down here, it's a little bit tough to read, but I can click on tuition and fees, financial aid, net price. Like I can look here and they'll give me a really good breakdown year by year and basically say, okay, here's what people are paying based on their income. So you might go onto a website and say, hey, the average financial aid package here is $25,000. I mean, that sounds great, but that may not be even closely relevant to you based on your income. So this kind of breaks it down further, and gives you a pretty good ballpark figure as to what your financial aid package might look like. I can do the same thing with, enrollment, really detailed information about their acceptance rate, where are kids from, ethnicity of kids that they've accepted, on and on and on. I could go down to accreditation, campus safety and security. I can find out how many incidents of robbery they had on campus, sexual assault, on and on and on. So iPad Navigator, if you really want to dig deep, is a pretty good website to use to get some information as you're doing your college search. All right? And there's a ton of different resources, right? But I just tend to think that these are two really good places with really up-to-date, accurate data. Another thing I would say to you about the search is this. Like last year here, the average number of colleges that a student applied to is about a little over 7. And that number's kind of stayed there. It's been there for a while. My last year here in the counseling office, I remember I had a student apply to like 23 colleges. And it's very, very hard to do a good job applying to 23 colleges. Quite honestly, it's hard to do a good job applying to 7 of them. So one of the things that John and his team work really hard at is to get kids to really narrow down their choices, right? And you hear, I'm not a big fan of the phrase reach school, safety school, et cetera, but the whole idea of applying to schools that are in different tiers in terms of selectivity and in terms of financial aid is important, right? You don't want to apply to 7 schools that, the acceptance rate is like 6% at all those schools and their average SAT scores are through the roof. Because the last thing you want to have happen is, May 2nd and you're sitting in John's office going, oh, I just got rejected to all 7 schools I applied to because I really didn't do a good job diversifying the list of schools that I applied to. So that's just something to keep in mind. I'm going to shift gears and talk about standardized testing for a minute. And these kids are in a kind of a weird place, right? They lived through COVID. We're done with COVID. Standardized testing during COVID went through like a disappearing act, then a slow ascent back up, and now it's really important again. So to get a full understanding of that and the role in college admissions, let me take you back like pre-COVID. So pre-COVID, SAT scores, ACT scores were a pretty integral part of the college admissions world. Why? Because it was a standard measure, right? Transcripts are unbelievably difficult to compare, right? And I'm sure John will tell you this. So when I was at Fairport, we were on a straight numerical grading system, 1 through 100. We did not give weight to any advanced classes. So if you took AP biology in Fairport and got a 91, that's what was on your transcript, a 91. If you took regular biology, got a 91, that's on your transcript. Here, which we're a little bit different, we're numerical, but we have a weighted grading system. So if you take an advanced placement class or an honors class, you get a 4% bump to your grade, all right? Pittsford for years was on an alpha grading system, right? A minus, B, whatever. A lot of schools on the west side of the city still are on like a 4.0 scale or a 5.0 scale. And that's just in this area. So now kind of do that all throughout the country. And it's incredibly hard to compare transcripts, right? So now COVID comes along and test centers are closed, kids can't take the test. So now we've pulled away a huge data point for college admissions people. It's one less thing that they have to look at, right? And it was the easiest thing to compare. Like we could argue forever about what it means, but if a kid from McQuaid Jesuit gets a 1350 on his SATs, and a kid from Topeka, Kansas gets 1,000, like we can argue forever about what it means, but there's a huge difference in the performance of that test. So COVID comes along and that data point is gone. Right? And all these schools became test optional. Right? And the reality is no one wanted to go test optional. If they wanted to, they could have gone test optional well before COVID. A handful of schools did, but most of them did not. So now they're in this test optional mode. Now as you come out of that, some schools said, well, we're going to stay test optional. And once the big heavy hitters, the Harvards and all those schools, start paying attention to test scores again and requiring them, everyone else tends to fall in place. And that's where we are right now. All right, so you may, as your son's doing his search, he may very well find schools that are, quote, test optional. And they are. They're not lying to you. They're test optional. They're saying to you, if you choose not to take or submit your scores, that's totally up to you. We will focus on the other parts of your application. And they're not lying. That's true. But the reality is, everyone now in this group has had a chance to take his SATs. So if they don't submit them, they either chose not to take them or they weren't happy with their scores, right? That's just true. Right? So, and if you don't submit your scores, it's just one less thing that you have in your corner as in terms of a positive. Right? It'd be like taking away your biggest extracurricular activity. You no longer have that. Right? Or taking away your 3 AP classes. You no longer have that. All right? So my suggestion to kids, and I'm sure John will agree with me, is I would call it submission optional, not test optional. So the message that kids are going to hear from us is take the tests. Take them multiple times, right? And get yourself a score. Then you decide at these test optional schools whether or not it makes sense for you to submit your score. All right, let me give you an example. If you go online to any college, if I just sit here right now and I Googled the mid-50th percentile of SAT scores, let's say University of Rochester. If I Googled that, don't hold me to these numbers, but I'm sure I'm going to be pretty close. I would find that the mid-50th percentile of SAT scores at U of R is probably between like 1,400 and like 1,520, let's say. So what they're telling you is that, and that's up there. So they're saying 50% of the kids that they accept had an SAT score that fell between 1,400 and 1,510 or 1,520, whatever. So if you knock down to 1,200 on your SATs, you'd be crazy to submit your score to U of R. They're giving you an out, and you're 200 points below their low point of their mid-50th percentile. Do not submit your scores there. Right? They would look like, what is this kid doing? It's crazy. Flip that around. Let's say you got that 1,200 SAT score. You apply to Nazareth, let's say. And again, don't hold me to these numbers. I'm going to guess Nazareth's mid-50th percentile SAT is probably like 1,100 to 1,290. Again, I'm making this up. So you're sitting there with your 1,200 at a place like Nazareth. You'd be crazy not to submit your scores. Right? So to me, that's the beauty of, quote, test optional. Taking it shouldn't be optional. Taking them, getting a score, and then strategically deciding whether you're going to submit them or not, that's a part of your strategy when you apply to colleges. All right? You tell a kid it's test optional, it's like, hey, it's like if you said to your son, hey, it's making your bed optional, they're probably not going to do it. Like showing up on a Saturday for an SAT is not the most enjoyable thing in the world. Right? So I tell kids take them multiple times. You know why? Most colleges super score. So if you take the test, let's say 3 times, they'll take your highest math score from whatever date you took it, and they'll match it up with your highest reading and writing score. So that's what super scoring is, and just about every college does that. The other thing that you run upon a lot is this. You know, I'll have kids will say to me, hey, let's say I'm applying to Nazareth. I looked at their mid-50th percentile. My SAT score falls well within their acceptable range, and it does. So a kid will say, well, I'm not going to take it again. And I might say to them, well, that's fine for admission's sake, but here's what you might not know. Like internally at Nazareth, they might have a merit scholarship, but part of the criteria is, hey, if you get a 1250 and you're in the top 10% of your class, you get a $15,000 presidential scholarship. Right? So you opt not to take the test again. Had you taken it and maybe gotten 3 more questions right, it might have been worth like $60,000 over the course of 4 years. Right? So again, I tend to make it overly simplistic. I just think it's a wise move for kids to take the SAT and or ACT more than once. All right? We could talk, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the difference between SAT and ACT, but both of these tests changed drastically in the last few years. They're both computerized now. They're much shorter versions than what they used to be. They used to be like 3 hours and 15 minutes. Now they're like 2 hours and 10 minutes. The ACT has a science component that the SAT does not. ACT is now switching. Their science component is optional. So again, that's just something to think about. And if your son's sitting there thinking, should I or should I not retake or take for the first time those tests, they really should come and speak with their counselor, or I'd be happy to talk to them also. Right? But I just want to give you a little bit of flavor of where SATs and ACTs are now. And like I said, they're certainly on the upswing. I say to kids a lot, I say, it'd be like, you're on a dating site and you don't post your picture. There's probably a reason, right? Same thing. Like you apply to college, you don't put your test score in there. They're probably not thinking, well, he must have done really, really well. He chose not to put a score, right? This is a little bit of common sense, right? So here are the test dates. They're posted all over the place. There's an SAT October 4th. The registration deadline for that is September 19th, and on and on. Anything after November, quite frankly, is too late for kids to take their tests. All right. Am I still up here? Are you going to do this one?
Oh, no. There's just, if you want to talk a little bit about the essay, John, I just didn't have a slide for that.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, let me talk a little bit about the college essay. Like if I said to you, hey, here are 7 things that colleges look at when trying to make a decision. Right? Quality of your high school, the rigor of your curriculum, right? Your grade point average. A lot of kids fall in love with their grade point average. It's like, well, it's not only your grade point average, it's what classes did you take to get that grade point average. And that's, to me, that's the most mistaken piece of the puzzle or most overlooked piece of the puzzle. Right? I always compare it to like Syracuse basketball. I say, okay, so 10 games in, Syracuse basketball is usually 10-0. And I say, well, they haven't beaten anyone yet, though. They've played 10 inferior schools, and they're pounding their chest. They're 10-0. Well, it's the same thing here. Like if you have like a 94 average, and you haven't availed yourself of any of the high-level classes that we offer here, it's a little shallow, right? And colleges recognize that, right? So rigor of your curriculum, your grade point average, extracurricular activities they look at. Why? Because the best predictor of what you're going to be like in college is what you're like in high school, quite simply. Right? If you're an uninvolved, disengaged student in high school, the guess that they're going to make is you're probably going to be the same way in college, and that's not what anyone's really looking for. Right? So they look at that. They look at your essay, which I'm going to talk about in a second. They look at your level of interest that you've demonstrated. They look at letters of recommendation. Okay, all those things. Let me talk about the importance of the essay. I've read tens of thousands of essays. I tend to think they're unbelievably important in the college admissions world. It's one of the only opportunities in the college admissions process where you get to become human. Right? Other than that, they're looking at these people don't know you. They have no idea who you are. Maybe they met you for 5 minutes at Starbucks, or they met you up here in our college advisement center or on a tour. But for the most part, they don't know who you are. So they're tasked with looking at your documents and in like 15 minutes, making a decision as to whether you're going to accept it or not. It's kind of a scary concept, but that's how it works. All right? So your essay is the place where you can show some personality and tell your story. Right? And you have to take advantage of it. Otherwise, you're a grade point average, you're an SAT score, you're, he played football, or he was on the student council, all those things. Right? This is where you can kind of come to life a little bit. Right? And it's incredibly important. And I love to write, and I like to read, I love to help kids with their essays. And there's a couple things I always say to kids. One thing I always say to them is this: know your audience. Right? These people are reading hundreds, sometimes thousands of essays. And quickly they get turned off. Right? So I say to kids this, I say, start your essay and go maybe 3 or 4 sentences. Hit the brakes, read your essay, and say to yourself, can any other human being write this essay? And if the answer is yes, crumble it up and start over again. All right? And here's an example I always use with kids. I say, look, let's say you start your essay and you say, my mother is a very important influence in my life, which is great. A lot of kids could say that, a lot of them. All right? If I'm writing about my mother and I say, hey, you can find my 90-year-old mother riding her yellow, huffy bicycle with a flower stuck in her basket up and down the hills in Geneva, New York, every morning at 6 o'clock. I say, kids, can anybody else say that? No. A stupid example, but the point is it has to be personalized. Right? And the whole purpose of an essay, I always say to kids, is about growth. When you sit down to write your essay, that should be your thought process. I'm writing about growth. Because, oh, by the way, that's what college is all about, right? It's growth. All right? So it can't be, like, here's my scrapbook. That's not what they're looking for. Let me tell you all the great things I've done. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for, what are you like as a human being? What makes you tick? What are you vulnerable about? Who are you? Not what have you done, who are you? What makes you you? So kids will say to me all the time, I've never had anything terrible happen to me. It's like, okay, who said you had to have something terrible happen to you to write a good essay? It's like, it's not about like some morbid essay. It's like, tell your story. It's like, there's only one you. That's it. There's one you. Write about yourself. And it's hard to write about yourself. All right? So, and I also say to kids, I say, hey, be likable in your essay. So if you walk into my office and I've never met you before in my life, and I just start saying to you, hey, let me tell these wonderful things about me and that I've done, you're probably going to go, this guy's an idiot, right? It's the same thing. If you're writing your essay and you just say, hey, I scored 12 goals and I worked 77 hours last week and I did this, like, they don't care. They care, but that doesn't tell me anything about who you are. It just tells me what you've done. Like, who are you? What's important to you? Right? What are you going to bring to our campus? How are you going to enrich our community? Right? That's what your focus has to be. I love reading kids' essays. I mean that sincerely, and I love helping them with them. And oftentimes they get mad at me because I'm like, "That's not a good start. You know, it's not you. Tell about you." And we're also in this crazy age of AI where, you know, I've read probably 2 essays so far this year. It's like, that's a great essay, but you didn't write it. Like, well, it just doesn't sound like you. I know you. It doesn't sound like you. It just does not sound like a 17-year-old wrote this, right? So you can play that game, but I tell you, I can promise you in the college admissions world, they'll sniff that out in a minute. All right? So again, essays are important. They take time. And the unfortunate part of it is, you know, there's a lot of essays you have to write. You know, everyone's going to have to write one essay for the common application. And I hate that they even call it an essay. It's really a personal statement. And that's what John's been, you know, they've been working with the kids on. So everyone's going to write that. Right? And they give you 7 essay prompts, and quite frankly, it doesn't matter if you pay attention to any of the essay prompts. They could basically just say, hey, write an essay about you. That's really what they should say. Right? So they do that. Then, depending on what schools you apply to, you know, a lot of schools have supplemental essays. Right? Some of them have 1, some of them have 2. MIT has 9, count them, 9 supplemental essays. So, you know, if you're blind to this and you're going along, hey, I got my essay done. Then you dig into the Common App and you go, oh, Colgate has 2 supplemental ones, and Hobart has a supplemental one, and you know, Carnegie Mellon, they have 2 more also. And now all of a sudden you're writing 7 essays. So I think it's really important to know what your workload is going to be essay-wise. And you have to stretch that out. You're not going to knock off 6 essays in a week. All right? The supplemental essays are usually shorter. I tend to call them the why us essays. They're usually like, why Penn State? Why do you want to come here? Tell us why the U of R is a good match, et cetera. Okay? So that's just my own ask for spiel on essays, so appreciate it.
To follow up a little bit on what John mentioned about the AI essay, that system that I mentioned that most colleges use, Slate, to read their application, has an AI detector built into that website, that web server that they use. So I've been talking to our students a lot when I feel like, wait a minute, maybe there were some phrases here that they borrowed. Let's get those cleaned up. All right, and as John mentioned, I do want to make you feel a little bit better about standardized tests. I know my son and daughter went through this process just a couple years ago. They were very quick to point out to me that they scored better than I did on their SATs. But you should all know, for those of you who took the SAT before the year 2000, you can add about 130 to 180 points onto your score if you want to compare it to your kids and feel really much better about yourself. Or at least, I still wasn't there, but at least I got within the ballpark, if that works. All right, I want to talk a little bit about Naviance. We went over this with your sons this morning, but you all have access to Naviance. If you've forgotten your credentials or you haven't logged in a while and you can't remember how, please shoot an email to Ms. Galetto in the counseling office. She can reset your password and get you website links and all those things. But to me, it is a great tool and a resource for our students to manage this process. This is the top of what you see when you log in to Naviance, and if you click on colleges the way I did there, it will blow out the options that are there. And right underneath researching colleges, there's a little heart next to colleges I'm thinking about. Right underneath that is the college visit tab. That's where you'll see all the schools that are coming to visit McQuaid. We have over 100 schools coming to visit this fall. They started yesterday. We had a couple today. And if your sons click on that link right there, they'll just see a list. Here's 2 schools that are coming tomorrow, 2 schools that are coming on Thursday, and they can click right there and register for that visit. And that's important that they do that because Mrs. Galetto will generate a pass for them to get out of class, to come to the College Advisement Center for that meeting. Students who register for visits will have a pass written for them that'll be available for them before school starts the day of that visit. All they have to do is walk into the College Advisement Center. They can get that pass right there. They can give it to their teacher and come. Now, there will be, I know this will happen, there will be a teacher who will say, wait a minute, we got a test today. You're not leaving class to miss a test to go see a college, and we appreciate that's going to happen. If for whatever reason your son has to miss a visit for a college that they care about, I really think there are 2 terrific options for them. One, they can stop by and tell Ms. Galetto or Mr. Griff or myself, hey, I really wanted to go see Villanova tomorrow, but I've got a test during that period, I can't make it. We'll tell the admissions representative that they really wanted to be there and couldn't make it, and they'll usually leave materials for them, and it's terrific. It happened today. One of the schools came. There were 2 students who were off campus at a project they were doing. They were interested in the school. We let them know. They left materials. They're good. The other way is for them simply to send an email to the admissions representative, and that will be listed actually. If you clicked on either one of any of these schools, it will tell you who is actually coming from the college to represent them to McQuaid. You can fire off an email to them saying, hey, sorry, would love to meet with you, but unfortunately I've got a math test. I can't quite make it today. Are you going to be in the area for a while? Can we meet for a cup of coffee? Are you going to a college fair where I can stop by and see you at another location? So I think that's an important thing to do. Please encourage your sons to check Naviance regularly. Not only will we post information about colleges, but there's great information there about scholarships that are available to them. Whenever we get news about local scholarships, we will post it right there with links. There's a ton of different information for those of you who haven't hunted around there. There's scattergrams that you can look at, which will give you the average GPA and the average SAT score of the students from McQuaid who have been admitted to each one of these colleges over the last couple of years, where you can see how your son might compare to that to really get a good assessment of how realistic those applications are. So there's tons of information out there. I think please encourage them to do that. I also, just in general, I did it this morning, encourage them to check their Schoology messages regularly, their email regularly. We want to stay on top of this and help them get through deadlines and be on top of everything. All right, most of you picked up a checklist when you came through the front door. And I want to walk through that checklist with you because while all these steps have been in place for us in the past, actually having this, I don't know if you want to put it up on your refrigerator or however you want to manage processes, but this is a simple way to do it. And there's an order of operations here that in some of these is unimportant, but others is really important. So you can see the first couple items here, the student brag sheet and the parent brag sheet. Mr. Griffin and myself want to write the best counselor recommendation we can possibly write for your son. And those brag sheets help us immensely. There's things we just don't know about your son that you do. You've lived with them for a long time. You get a lot of great information that you can pass along to us that we just didn't know. Your sons do it too. And those sheets are critical. The student brag sheet is available in Naviance when your son logs in. Simple link to the survey section, and he can answer these questions. It does take some time. It is not a quick survey. We want them to reflect on their high school experience. We want them to think about what they've taken away from their time at McQuaid, any obstacles they faced, things that they really felt they've contributed to the institution. That all comes through in that student brag sheet. The parent brag sheet is available for you also on Naviance, but we did print out some paper copies if you want to take one with you, if it's easier for you to fill it out via paper and email it or drop it off, have your son drop it off with us. We will put it in your son's file, and then when we write your recommendation, we will have that information here. But I can't begin to tell you how useful this information is for us as we put these recommendations together. Because what we're really trying to do is put your son in the context of McQuaid, of the experience here, and what they've contributed, what they've taken away from this, what kind of college student might they be. The more information we can get from you and get from him, the better it will be. We know what kind of questions to ask, but these forms are really immensely useful. We also ask your son to fill out a brag sheet for each teacher that they are asking to write a recommendation for them, and it's fairly specific. It's not a list of their activities. They're really supposed to reflect on the class or classes that they took with that teacher. What did they learn? Were there some great assignments? What kind of experiences did they have? That will help your son's teacher write the best recommendations that they possibly can for your sons. We want your sons to enter their colleges into the Common Application and make sure their Common Application is linked with their Naviance account. If they came to one of those workshops with Mr. Griffa over the summer, that has already been done. It takes about 30 seconds. It's really not hard. There are instructions on how to do it in the handout we gave you, in the Parent Night handout. But any student can just walk into the College Advisement Center, sit down with Ms. Galetto, and get that done in 30 seconds. The reason for that is whatever applications your son intends to apply through the Common Application, and whatever rounds, whether that's early action, early decision, rolling, regular decision, will then populate Naviance and tell us, here are his deadlines. We need to know that that's got to be there November 1st, and that's how we know, is by students indicating that in the Common Application, it coming through to Naviance, and then we're able to take action. We also want to sit down with your sons to walk through their Common Application, and some of them hate me already because we've done that. I will literally go page by page, box by box, line by line. I have done this for 3 years. I have yet to do it and not find at least one mistake. There's always something that a student makes, whether it's coding the course the right way, whether it's just putting extra commas and periods and spaces and places. There's a feature in the Common App on each section where you can click preview, and it sort of is like a print preview on a word processor. All these boxes that you just filled in, now you see how it's represented to an admissions officer. And it can be kind of surprising when you actually do that and take a look at it. But we really want to spend the time to find that, to make sure that that document is presenting them in the best possible light that we can. And it takes time, and you got to be diligent about it, but it's worth it. A perfect example is something Mr. Serafine mentioned. There are some schools that your sons will be applying to where they might want their SAT scores to go to them, and there are other schools where they don't. There is a place on the Common Application for you to fill in your SAT scores. If you fill them in and you send them to a school that you may not want to have them, it is going to be very difficult for an admissions officer to unring that bell. They will see them when they're reviewing the application. Where if you just submitted that application without them, you're good. And then it's time to submit another application that you want your scores, you add them in and send them. So I like to meet with students and break this into 2 groups. Who are you sending your scores to? Let's put the SATs on your Common App, submit it. Where aren't you sending your scores? Take the SATs out of the Common App, submit those. It's an important piece of the process because there are colleges, and there's a college that a lot of our students apply to, where they'll say, look, we're a test optional school. You can fill out a form saying yes or no, but if you put them on the Common Application, we will use them regardless of whether you said yes or no. And I never want a student to be stuck making a mistake. As John also mentioned, those short answer questions that each college asks, I think are becoming more and more important to them as they differentiate things. That even though they're short answers, don't shortchange them. They take time, they're important. Some are very specific, some are quirky. And I included some of them in the Parent Night brochure. You can see what some of the schools are asking. They're everything from these deep, thoughtful responses to one of the colleges asked, what's the song that is the best emblem of your life so far? What's your favorite website? There's some really interesting questions that are coming out there that aren't necessarily big meaning, but they're playing a role in the decision that they make. Once the student has done all of those things, student brag sheet, parent brag sheet, teacher brag sheet, colleges and Common App, linked to Naviance, they've met with us to review their Common App, the last step is that they go to Mrs. Galetto and request that their transcript be sent. That tells Mr. Griffin and I everything's ready to go, and we'll fire it all off. We want at least 10 school days before a deadline to make sure that happens. So people need to back up from those deadlines. The one checklist item that I drew out specifically here is teacher letters of recommendation. We want students to have requested those by the end of this month. That gives the teachers more time to actually write those recommendations, because you can imagine a lot of teachers are being asked by a couple of students. They want to do a good job and take their time. And so we've told teachers they will all be requested by the end of September. They should ask them in person, and then go see Mrs. Galetto how to check the boxes in the Common Application, in the Naviance, excuse me, and then teachers will get those notifications. They can upload those recommendations straight into Naviance, and then they can go out to all the schools that a student is applying to. So I hope this checklist is useful for people. It's just a good step to make sure everything gets done and done in a timely way. Please don't hesitate to give us a shout or email if you have any questions about that. I'm sure there will be exceptions and there'll be things that we haven't factored in here, but in general terms, we think this should work pretty well. All right. I do want to speak briefly about financial aid. We are going to have financial aid night here on the 30th of September. But as John mentioned, deadlines are important, and none more important than financial aid. The old director of financial aid that I used to work with at Colgate said this is the one time in your life where it's better to be on time and wrong than late and 100% right. So in other words, if you have to estimate something to get your forms in on time, estimate them and get them in on time, because you'll go to the back of the line for financial aid if you miss deadlines. Please know that financial aid incorporates more than just need-based aid. Merit-based aid, scholarships, that is all financial aid. Students say, oh no, I'm not getting financial aid, I got a merit scholarship. It's financial aid. And know that the vast majority of people end up affording the colleges that they attend because of need-based aid, not merit-based aid, although merit can play can be a wonderful benefit to people. There's a ton of different criteria. There's really two forms that you need to be aware of: the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA form, and the CSS, College Scholarship Service profile form. Most public schools only need the FAFSA. Many private schools want both the FAFSA and the profile. The FAFSA largely is an income-based form used to assess ability to pay. The profile factors both income and assets into the equation. So you can get a slightly different read on a family's ability to pay by using those two forms. The nice part about completing the FAFSA is within a couple days of having completed it, your son will get an email back saying, we have processed your FAFSA. And just like those portals, he'll probably throw it in the trash. Do not let him do that, because what comes as part of that email is what's called your student aid index. And that is what the federal government thinks you can afford as a family to contribute to your son's education for 1 year worth of schooling. That's a really important number for you to know. At least when my kids got that back, I started to laugh hysterically, because there's no way I could afford that number that they said I could afford. But at least I knew what the colleges were receiving in terms of that information from the federal government. And every college will receive the same information regardless of their cost, regardless of where you apply. That form will give colleges the exact same family contribution number across the board. Profile can be a little bit different because colleges can ask individual questions that they want you to ask. Outside scholarships can certainly help in this process. As I mentioned, a lot of those will post to Naviance. There are 3 websites that I think could be really useful for our students. FastWeb and Going Merry are both nationwide aggregators of scholarships, and you can plunk in information about yourself. You know, you always hear those stories about the left-handed person who made their prom dress out of duct tape and they got a $20,000 scholarship. It was through FastWeb or Going Merry that they probably found those things. They tend to be scholarships that are a little bit harder to get because you're in a national competition for them, but the dollar figures can be pretty high. So it could be worth people's time to do that. But the last one on the list, the Rochester Area Community Foundation does a tremendous job aggregating some local scholarships, and they've also aggregated the application process for those scholarships so you can fill out one form and be considered for multiple scholarships in the Rochester area. So the competition's a little bit smaller. It's a great website. There's some terrific tools that are available to you there, if that all makes sense. Here is all our contact information. And I want to make sure, we'll post this presentation along with the video of this to the counseling page, so you can refer to it at any time if you need it. I asked Mr. Serafine, we wanted to close with some tips for parents, just to give us some thoughts. I'll give you mine and let John share them. Clearly, as you learned tonight, parents should go on wine tours and students should post their photos to dating websites is the best way to make all this stuff work. But I do think it's important, as John mentioned, for you to try to get a range of colleges for your sons to apply to from an admissibility perspective. You know your sons a whole lot better than we do. I had one child who just doesn't handle rejection well. And if we were to apply to a bunch of high-powered places, she's probably going to get more bad news than good news. And for her, that was going to be a really difficult thing. And as a parent, I always felt like my job is to protect their self-esteem to a certain extent. And so let's try to get a blend of schools on there where you're getting some good news. Sure, shoot for some of those places, but not 12 of those places. And let's make sure you're getting more good news than bad news. My other kid is completely unfazed by that and knows the realities of the college admissions process. Bring it on. Give me bad news, I'm okay. Maybe I'll get some good news in there. And so I think you need to think about how do you want your sons to feel as they start to get this news back. And I truly believe, like John said, the more of these you send out, the more challenging this is going to be. I think 7 actually is a terrific number to apply to, and I know we both kind of dislike that notion of reach, match, safety, but you apply to 2 reaches, 3 matches, and 2 safeties, you're going to get at least 2 pieces of good news. You'll probably get a couple more, and maybe you get something great on the reach side. And I think that's a really smart way to approach this. And regardless, once your son gets that news back and starts hearing from these places, please take the moment to celebrate the wins. It is really important. There's a lot of data that connects students' success in college to how supported they felt by their family about the decision they made to go to that college. That became a really important piece, that if students felt like my family was behind my choice to attend this place, the student tended to have higher GPAs, more successful outcomes. And so I think the most important thing you can do when this is all over and they finally make that choice, and some it takes way too long, or at least for me it takes way too long. But once they make it, tell them you're proud of them, tell you love them, and it's a great choice, and they're going to have a fantastic experience. And I think you're setting them up for an amazingly successful college experience that way. John, let me turn it over to you for your last thoughts.
I have a ton of thoughts, but here's what I would say to you. The college admissions is like the most inexact science in the world. It just is. And I said this earlier, and it's true. I mean, the average amount of time that a college application gets reviewed, it fluctuates year to year, but it's less than 20 minutes at most places. So, we ask these kids to do a million things, right? Take all these hard classes, volunteer, play sports, be in clubs, be a great human being, do all these things. And it gets kind of boiled down to like a 15-minute review by someone who has no clue who that person is. So just by that nature itself, it's an unbelievably inexact science. And I've done this forever. And every year, like John, I always look forward to, May 1, and I'm reviewing who got accepted where. And I'm always surprised. I can look at 5 kids from McQuaid's I feel know very well, and they'll apply to a certain school, and in my head I think, okay, these 2 are probably going to get in, these aren't. The results come back and they're totally different. So I think knowing that is really important. Like John said, kids don't like to be reject it. No one does. But it's a part of this process, right? It really is. And there's no perfect school out there. Kids all the time say, this is a school I wanted to go to since I was 3. It's like, well, that's great. But, there's a lot of other really good places out there if this doesn't work. And the reality is so much is out of your control. Like your happiness and satisfaction level at a college is so much is out of your control, right? What roommate do you get? What professors do you get freshman year? I mean, all those things, like they kind of dictate, your happiness, right? So again, it's an inexact science. The other thing I would say to you, tip-wise, like stay organized. It's a lot of stuff, and it comes at you quickly, and it comes at you in a small time frame. Right? And the third thing I would say is I'm going to talk a little bit about financial aid. Don't get intimidated and make decisions early on based on the terrifying price tag that's hanging from colleges. Let the financial aid system play itself out. I'm in the minority who thinks it's a pretty fair system, but I think a lot of times you'll hear things like, oh, my buddy at work or my neighbor told me that she applied for financial aid, they didn't get anything, we make more. Don't do that. Let the system play itself out. Like just in this area, if you go online tonight and you say, let me find what's the price tag that's dangling from the University of Rochester for 1 year, it's going to be like $92,000, right? At Nazareth, the price tag is going to stay like $62,000. At a Geneseo or Brockport or any SUNY school, it's going to hover around 27 grand. So there's huge disparity between cost of attendance. And I think sometimes people say, well, we can't fish in this pool over here. We can't write a $90,000 check each of the next 4 years. Most people can't. But if you let the process play out, sometimes you find out that, hey, the final cost to go to that $90,000 school, when the process is done, isn't a whole lot different than it is to go to a SUNY school. All right? So again, do you want to apply to 8 schools that all cost $92,000 a year? Probably not. All right? But again, early on in the process, my advice is don't get scared off because of the price tag. At the end of the process, most people make a decision based around finances. That's just reality. But early on in the process, I would encourage you not to do that. All right? Questions?
Yes, we saved about 15 minutes for questions, and that's perfect. And I can't see with lights. Questions? What did we ask? Yes, hi.
SAT, ACT, what would you recommend? Just sticking to one, or doing one of each, or two of, is it wise to mix or stick with one?
John might feel differently. He's got a different experience than I'm a big fan of taking both. Because some students just do better on one than the other, and it's harder to know until you've tried. And if all of a sudden it's clear that one is a leader, that's where then you invest your energy and time.
I'm a big fan of taking both if we're sitting here and your parents are juniors. I think this far down the road, it's hard to prepare for both of them in a short time frame. So if they haven't taken them yet, or if they've only taken one, I would focus on the one that they're most familiar with. I think it's hard to do justice to both of them in the fall of your senior year. Mm-hmm. Colleges will take either one.
Absolutely. Yes?
What is the basis for not recommending to the boys not taking more than 3 times?
Oh,
Come back home.
for not taking the SATs more than 3 times? There's just statistics that say your score doesn't improve after the third. Some students do, but rarely. The standard deviation on SATs is 50 points. So if you scored 1,200, what the College Board is saying is on any given day, that could have been 1,250 or that could have been 1,150, right? And so I think my rule of thumb is if you think you're going to go up more than 50 points, give it another shot.
And there's nothing that says you can take it 30 times.
Yep.
I just think there's better ways to spend your Saturday mornings than sitting locked in a classroom for 3 hours. I always tell kids too that it's similar to having 17 letters of recommendation written on your behalf. At some point, it's like, yeah, I don't need all those, nor do I need 17 test dates. But they can do as many as they want. Sometimes, so athletes, like recruited athletes sometimes, they'll take the test 6 or 7 times because the college is saying, hey, you got to get to this level. You got to get to this number if we're going to award you a scholarship. That's reality. So some kids, I have kids just take it over and over again to try to get there.
Sure. Other things? Yeah.
How do the students meet with you? Do they set up like formal schedules or appointments?
And most times I just walk in. Ms. Sheffer is the assistant office manager in the counseling office. Just walk in. I need to meet with Mr. Young, Mr. Griffa. Let's set it up. I tend to poke at them if I haven't heard from them in a while and I'm worrying about a deadline or something coming up. But I let sort of their pace, hey, I'm ready for you to look at my essay. I'm ready for you to review some of the stuff. Just set up a meeting and we're happy to do it. We block most of our days just to meet with students. Yes?
Do you guys have criteria to help athletes with their search process?
Yeah.
Because it's a big piece of it.
Yeah, no, it is. There's a lot, honestly. And it's like the biggest, I don't know what words I want to put to it. On October 1st, the two of us and Adrian Wojciechowski, who's an ESPN guy, are doing a panel over at the Golisano Center with Scott Fitch, who's the basketball coach at Fairport, about this specific topic. There's so many pieces to it. I mean, accurately assessing your abilities. Here's my own, I had four kids of mine, all played college athletics. My two daughters played Division I soccer, I had a son that played Division I lacrosse, and a son that played at Hobart, plays soccer. It's a crazy process. And there's so many pieces to it, and it's changing at a rapid pace, right? So I always think the path is littered with kids who I think were misplaced, who went off to college and had aspirations of playing at this level. It didn't work, and all of a sudden, like 3 years in, they've never played a second. That's just my own personal bias. So I try to pay really close attention to have a real accurate assessment of your abilities. The end game here is a good college experience, right? Market yourself. Recruiting, most kids, unless you're like that big time blue chip, surefire Division I athlete, right? If you're not that person, which they're very hard to come by, it's incumbent upon the kid to be proactive. Like if like my son plays soccer at Hobart, right? The Hobart soccer coach isn't sitting there on this bucket of recruiting money where he's just scouring the country recruiting kids. But he's going to respond when my son reaches out to him and says, hey, I'm really interested in Hobart. Here's my schedule. Let me tell you, here's my transcript. It's just stuff like that. I think that's important. These guys do it all the time. Some coaches are better at it than others. Coaches are busy. It's hard in season to do that and try to advocate for kids too. There's no shortage of coaches that come through here and meet with kids. So yeah, there's a lot. I would personalize it. I mean, sit with these guys, sit with me, I'd be happy to do it. Here's what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't spend a ton of money. I got that call today from one of my buddies in Victor. Says, hey, would you hire someone to help my daughter who was a lacrosse player? I was like, no. You do the same exact thing yourself. That's just my bias.
Yeah.
The email that the boys should be using, is it their McQuaid email or is it their personal email?
That's actually, that's a really good question. Let me repeat it. Should they be using their McQuaid email or their own personal email? This is going to sound counterintuitive. I actually think for some of this process, they should use their own email. I'll tell you why. McQuaid emails sometimes filter certain things from coming through. I know my time on the college side, there were certain high schools, I knew the Hobart William Smith emails just didn't get through to those students, but they got through to their own Gmail accounts or Hotmail accounts or whatever they used. So I do think that's important. I still think they need to monitor their McQuaid email because that's what we'll be using to communicate with them. But on the college
if
side,
their personal email is Party Animal 101,
Yeah.
probably not a good idea, right?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Every year that I worked in admissions, we had a bulletin board with the best email addresses of the year up there, and every year, yeah, I can't even repeat some of the best ones at all. I can't even share them. So, but I am a fan of, actually, if I were catching you in your sophomore year, I would say create a Gmail account that's John's college admissions account. And so then all your email would go there that you knew was college related. Up here. Yeah, way in the back.
I have a question in regards to demonstrated interest, or actually not. The schools that say they don't track the demonstrated interest, are they still tracking the clicks and the emails and
Nope.
things like that?
Yeah, they're not. If they tell you they're not using demonstrated interest, they're not. I really believe that to be
I never
true.
believe that. We disagree all the time. I never believe that.
So here, like, I worked at Colgate for I don't know how many years, and they did interviews there, and they were non-evaluative, and nobody believed it.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, we never used them, ever. So they were telling you the truth. I don't think, first off, our professional organization dictates that if we're going to use something in the admissions process to evaluate a candidate, we have to let you know that. We have to tell you that we are. And that either has to be in our publications or on our website. So I do think there's an element of truth to that.
Stalking can be counterproductive.
Correct.
And there's a fine line between demonstrating interest and stalking. Like, I called 17 times this week. Like, okay, we got it. When that happened.
Yes. I got cupcakes every day from the time a student applied to the time we sent her a letter saying, please cease and desist the cupcakes, because I knew we probably weren't going to be sending good news. There was going to be a time that the cupcakes crossed in the mail with the bad news, and we weren't going to know what we were getting. So, but here's the thing. I think at any institution, you want to demonstrate that you know enough about the institution to make a good decision if you were admitted, right? That I guess I think demonstrated understanding is a better phrase. You want to be able to demonstrate to that institution that I've done enough research, I've done enough homework. If you were to offer me admission, I can make an educated decision to attend or not. What happened? Yes?
How many teacher recommendations should they be aiming for?
How many teacher recommendations? If they put their colleges they're interested in into the Common Application, what's very nice is you can do it two ways. You can look in the Common App, or actually when it funnels over to Naviance, it will tell you exactly how many the colleges will require and how many they will accept. We require 0, we will accept 3. We require 1, we'll accept 2. We require 2, we'll accept 2. I recommend students do what they ask. It's not a trick question. And we actually then, if students have 2 that they've asked their teachers for and they're in Naviance, the system allows them to say, okay, wait, this school only needs 1. I want that 1 to go there. I want these 2 to go to the school that needs 2.
Here's a couple of good, I think, important pieces about letters of recommendation. These should probably come from someone you've had at least in like the last 12 months, right? If you're going to have your 5th grade teacher write a letter of recommendation about your performance in like the school play when you're 5th grade, it's probably not a good idea, right? So I always think it's a good idea, someone that's had you, let's say, probably in 11th grade, maybe 10th grade. And it probably should be someone in the core areas, right? English, math, science, social studies, and foreign language. Right? If you want to have a coach or an advisor, that's fine, but you also should supplement that with someone who's had you in an academic setting in a core class. The other thing I would say is this, and this is just factual. At McQuaid, there are probably, maybe not even probably, there are 4 people, teachers in here, who write about 85–90% of the kids' letters of recommendation. All right, so, and we tell them, because we tell kids, hey, it should be someone most likely from 11th grade, all right? So now you go through the list, like Mrs. Suter taught every 11th grader American history. She AP in regular. A couple of guys taught AP or English. So there's a very small number of people who write a vast majority of letters of recommendation. So they want to be early to the table asking these people if they're going to write their letters, all right? Mrs. Suter came to me last year, I remember in the fall, and said, are you okay if I put a limit on the number of letters I write? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, yeah, if it's, it's a lifestyle thing, right? I mean, she's asked for like 60 some odd letters of recommendation. They take time. I mean, to write a good letter takes about an hour, right? And so my point is, be early to the table asking people to write letters of recommendation. If your application is due November 1st, you waltz into Mr. Schuter's room on October 31st and go, hey, could you write a letter of recommendation for me? It's due tomorrow. He might have 20 more ahead of you. All right, so they hear that from us too all the time. Reach out to people early and secure a letter.
That's why we've asked for them all to be submitted by the 30th of September, so the teachers have enough time to do it. The students have to own this part of the process. They need to ask them in person. I beg them to write them a thank you note after they've done it. I don't know how successful I am, but I will ask. And they need to pay attention to what their college is looking for. I was with a student today who's applying to a school, a university, and if you were applying to the schools of arts and science, they want this kind of a teacher. If you're applying to the school of business, they want that kind of a teacher. So students need to own that, and it's all there. It's for them to see. They just have to look and see it. What happened?
Jake, you got any questions up there?
Oh, we got one way in the back. Hi.
How much guidance do you give the students through the college selection? I don't know every college out there, you know a lot more than we do. Do you help them and say, hey, here's a great college you might not know about?
Absolutely. I met with a student today who was in love with one school, worried that his list isn't rounded out enough. I said, great, I'll send you an email with 5 more that are like it, that are varying levels of selectivity. I need you to then do the homework and see if they're a good match and a good fit for what you want. I know they're similar, but to me they're similar in one way. For you, they might be another. So we're always happy to meet with students to round out their lists. What have we done? I think we're good. Thank you all very much. This was really useful. We're glad we got to spend some time with you tonight.